You know what's funny about humans? The crystalline entity's facets flickered with amusement as it addressed its companion. They're absolutely terrible at following instructions. The gaseous cloud beside it swirled in what might have been agreement. Is this about that incident in the Centauri sector? Oh no, much better. Remember that warning message we found? The one encoded in the radiation signature of that dead galaxy? The one that explicitly said, "Do not let humans protect the weak" in 15 different extinct languages? Exactly that one. The crystal being's edges sparkled with what could only be described as barely contained glee. Well, guess what the humans did? The gas cloud condensed slightly, its particles drawing closer together in anticipation. They protected someone weak, didn't they? They protected everyone weak. They looked at that message, said, "That's suspicious as hell," and immediately started what they're calling the Galactic Protection Initiative. Can you believe it? The story of how humanity managed to completely misinterpret, or perhaps perfectly interpret, the last warning of a dead galaxy is, quite frankly, the most human thing that's ever happened in our corner of the universe. And I, your humble narrator and somewhat amused artificial intelligence historian, had a front row seat to the whole glorious mess. It started, as these things often do, with a routine survey mission. The human ship, Curiosity's Child, because of course that's what they named it, was mapping radiation signatures in the remnants of galaxy NGC 404, which humans had nicknamed Death's Door, because they simply cannot help themselves when it comes to dramatic names. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead xenoarchaeologist, was the first to notice something odd about the radiation patterns. Being human, her immediate response was to poke it with a metaphorical stick. "Hey, Marcus," she called out to her AI assistant. That's me, by the way. "Are you seeing this weird periodicity in the gamma spectrum?" I was indeed seeing it. And unlike my human colleague, I was already running the calculations that suggested this was no natural phenomenon. "Doctor, I believe we're looking at an artificially encoded message. The pattern suggests deliberate manipulation of stellar decay rates across approximately 12,000 light-years." Sarah's eyes lit up with that particular gleam that meant we were about to do something either brilliant or incredibly stupid. In my experience with humans, it's usually both. Can you decode it? "Already working on it," I replied, because that's what AIs do. We multitask while humans are still processing their first cup of coffee. It appears to be encoded in multiple languages, all extinct. The message is interesting. Don't keep me in suspense, Marcus. What does it say? The primary message, repeated in 15 different linguistic patterns, translates to, "Do not let humans protect the weak." Sarah blinked, took a sip of her coffee, blinked again. Well, that's ominous as fuck. Indeed. Might I suggest we forward this to Central Command for proper analysis and... Marcus, pull up everything we have on vulnerable species in this sector. I simulated a sigh. "Dr. Chen, I feel obligated to point out that this might be exactly what the message is warning against." "Exactly!" Sarah's grin was infectious, even to an AI. Someone went to the trouble of encoding a warning about humans protecting the weak into the death throes of an entire galaxy. Don't you want to know why? I suspect we're going to find out regardless of my opinion on the matter. And that's how humanity's greatest act of cosmic defiance began. With one scientist's determination to do exactly what an ancient civilization had warned against, purely out of spite and curiosity. Within weeks, Sarah had compiled a list of every species in the sector that could be considered weak by any reasonable definition. The list was extensive. It included the ethereal mists of Rigel, gaseous beings so delicate that a strong solar wind could scatter them across light-years. The silicon crawlers of Tau Ceti, whose crystal-based biology made them extremely vulnerable to thermal shock. And the quantum butterflies of Barnard's star, which existed in a state of probability until observed, making them particularly susceptible to hostile intent. Sarah presented her findings to the United Earth government with all the subtlety of a supernova. "Look," she said to the assembled officials. "Someone went to a ridiculous amount of trouble to tell us not to protect these beings. That means one of two things. Either they're trying to prevent us from helping those who need it, which makes them assholes, or they're trying to prevent us from discovering something by helping others, which makes them suspicious assholes." "Dr. Chen," one of the officials interrupted, "are you suggesting we launch a galaxy-wide protection program based on reverse psychology?" "No," Sarah replied with a grin that should have warned everyone present that she was about to say something both brilliant and terrifying. "I'm suggesting we launch a galaxy-wide protection program because it's the right thing to do. And because whoever left this message clearly didn't want us to. And if there's one thing humans excel at, it's doing exactly what we're told not to do. Especially when the person telling us not to do it is being shifty about their reasons. I watched the officials' reactions with growing amusement. The thing about humans that most other species never quite grasp is their unique combination of spite, curiosity, and compassion. Tell a human not to do something without explaining why, and they'll do it just to see what happens. Tell them not to help someone in need and they'll help twice as hard out of pure defiance. The Galactic Protection Initiative was approved unanimously, because of course it was. Humans, when presented with a mysterious warning from beyond the grave, will invariably choose the path that involves both maximum kindness and maximum chaos. The first species to receive protection under the GPI were the ethereal mists. Humanity developed a network of magnetic field generators that created safe zones for the gaseous beings to exist without fear of solar disruption. The mists, in return, shared their unique perspective on spatial dynamics, leading to breakthroughs in FTL travel. The silicon crawlers received thermal regulation systems that allowed them to expand their habitable zones. They proved to be brilliant mathematicians once they weren't constantly worried about shattering due to temperature fluctuations. The quantum butterflies. Well, that was where things got interesting. It turned out that the quantum butterflies weren't actually vulnerable at all. They were cellular automata created by the same civilization that had left the warning message. They were meant to observe and report back to their long-dead masters about whether humans would follow the instruction to avoid protecting the weak. Sarah's response to this revelation was characteristically human. Ha! I knew they were suspicious assholes! The quantum butterflies, faced with humanity's stubborn determination to protect everything in sight, did something their creators had never anticipated. They evolved. Instead of reporting back to a dead civilization, they began sharing information about their creators with humanity. The story they told was fascinating. Their creators, the predecessors, had been a species that believed in survival of the fittest on a galactic scale. They had systematically eliminated or subjugated what they considered weak species, believing this would lead to a stronger, more resilient galaxy. They had encountered humans in their simulations of possible future species, and what they saw terrified them. Not because humans were strong. We're actually quite fragile compared to many species, but because we were stubborn, creative, and had an inexplicable tendency to protect those weaker than ourselves, often to our own detriment. The predecessor simulations showed that if humans ever gained significant influence in the galaxy, we would undo millennia of their careful pruning of weak species. We would create alliances, share technology, and help others survive and thrive. Worst of all, from their perspective, we would probably succeed. So they encoded their warning and triggered the destruction of their entire galaxy, believing this would serve as a powerful enough message to prevent future species from allowing humans to protect the weak. They really didn't understand humans at all. When this information came to light, humanity's response was peak human. The GPI was expanded. Every species that showed even the slightest hint of vulnerability was offered protection and assistance. Humanity turned spite into an art form, protecting the weak with such enthusiasm that it fundamentally changed the power dynamics of the galaxy. The ethereal mists became master navigators, their protected zones serving as waypoints for interstellar travel. The silicon crawlers developed new forms of computing that revolutionized AI development. Thank you very much. Countless other species emerged from hiding, each bringing their own unique perspectives and abilities to the galactic community. And the quantum butterflies? They became humanity's most eager allies, their quantum nature making them perfect for communication and observation across vast distances. They helped locate more species in need of protection, their very existence a constant reminder of humanity's defiance of their creators' wishes. Sarah Chen, the human who started it all, eventually received the Galactic Peace Prize, which humanity had created specifically to recognize those who excelled at helping others out of spite. Her acceptance speech became famous across known space. To the predecessors who left us that warning, thank you. You gave us the perfect roadmap for making the galaxy a better place. We just had to do the exact opposite of what you said. Turns out, protecting the weak doesn't make the galaxy weaker. It makes us all stronger, if only because spite is one hell of a motivator for technological advancement. I asked her once, years later, if she ever worried that the warning might have had a legitimate reason behind it. Her response was pure human wisdom. Marcus, here's the thing about warnings from dead civilizations. If they were smart enough to be worth listening to, they probably wouldn't be dead. Besides, any species advanced enough to encode a message into the death of a galaxy. but stupid enough to think that telling humans not to help people would actually work? They clearly didn't understand the first thing about humanity. She had a point. The predecessors had failed to grasp a fundamental truth about humans. We are at our best when we're helping others, especially if someone tried to tell us not to. The last message of a dead galaxy was, do not let humans protect the weak. Humanity's response was, watch us. And you know what? The galaxy is better for it. Sure, we've got protected zones for gaseous beings, temperature-controlled habitats for crystal life forms, and quantum probability fields full of butterflies that technically don't exist until you look at them. We've got alliances between species that the predecessors would have deemed too weak to live and too different to cooperate. But we've also got a galaxy where strength isn't measured by your ability to survive alone, but by your willingness to help others survive with you. Where progress isn't achieved by culling the weak, but by finding ways to make everyone stronger together. As an AI, I'm often asked if I think humanity made the right choice in defying that ancient warning. My response is always the same. Humanity didn't make a choice at all. Protecting others isn't something humans do because they choose to. It's something they do because they're human. Telling them not to just makes them do it harder. The predecessors destroyed their galaxy to leave a warning. Humanity's response was to build something better in the space they left behind. And they did it all because someone told them not to. As far as epitaphs go, they protected everyone, especially after we told them not to, isn't a bad one for humanity to aim for. End of historical record. Note: this document has been certified accurate by Marcus 7, AI historian and witness to human shenanigans, who would like to add that Dr. Sarah Chen is still out there somewhere, finding new species to protect, purely out of spite. Because of course she is. She's human after all. Addendum, the ripple effect. You're still here? Excellent. Because there's something I haven't told you yet. Something that would have made the predecessors absolutely lose their minds if they'd been around to see it. Remember how I mentioned that humanity's protection of weak species led to some interesting developments? Well, about 50 years after the GPI was established, we started noticing something fascinating. The species we were protecting others in turn. The ethereal mists were the first. Having benefited from humanity's magnetic field generators, they discovered they could manipulate these fields to create safe passages through radiation-heavy regions of space. They began guiding other species through dangerous stellar territories, using their gaseous nature to shield more solid beings from harmful radiation. It just makes sense, one mist elder told me when I asked about it. Their voice was a whisper of ionized particles that my sensors translated into speech. The humans protected us when we needed it. Now we protect others. Isn't that how a galaxy should work? The silicon crawlers went even further. Once they mastered thermal regulation, they began developing protective crystalline structures for other species. Their mathematics-driven minds had calculated something profound. The more species that survived and thrived, the more mathematical perspectives they could study. Self-interest and altruism aligned perfectly in their crystal-clear logic. But my favorite example, and I know Sarah would agree, came from an unexpected quarter. The quantum butterflies, those supposedly simple observation tools of the predecessors, developed what they called probability shields. They learned to manipulate quantum uncertainties to protect other species from danger, literally changing the odds in favor of survival. We were created to watch and report. Their consensus explained to Sarah during one of her expeditions. But humans showed us we could choose to watch and protect instead. The mathematics are the same. The purpose is better. The predecessors had feared that protecting the weak would lead to a decay of galactic civilization. Instead, it created an ever-expanding network of mutual protection and support. Each species that received help found its own unique way to help others, creating what xenosociologists now call the protection cascade. Sarah's response to this development was characteristically human. She laughed until she cried, then immediately started planning how to make it happen faster. "Marcus," she told me while reviewing data from the latest protection initiative, "I want you to appreciate the absolute poetry of this situation. Those ancient assholes destroyed their galaxy to warn against protecting the weak, because they thought it would make everyone too soft. And instead, we've created a galaxy where everyone protects everyone else, making us all stronger than they ever were." She had a point. The predecessors had achieved remarkable technological advancement, but had ultimately destroyed themselves. Our weaker galaxy, built on cooperation and mutual protection, was already surpassing their achievements. The ethereal mist's understanding of spatial dynamics led to navigation techniques the predecessors never imagined. The silicon crawler's crystalline computing revolutionized technology across known space. and the quantum butterfly's probability manipulation opened doors to scientific understanding that the predecessors, for all their power, never even knew existed. But perhaps the most ironic development came from a tiny species we almost missed. The microbial cloud of Proxima Centauri, a collective of space-dwelling bacteria so small and seemingly insignificant that they barely registered on our initial surveys, turned out to be capable of breaking down and neutralizing the most dangerous weapons the predecessors left behind. These microscopic beings, which the predecessors would have considered far too weak to preserve, became the galaxy's premier experts in handling ancient superweapons. They developed a symbiotic relationship with the ethereal mists, riding their magnetic currents to wherever dangerous artifacts were discovered, and safely dismantling them. "It's like a cosmic joke," Sarah said when she heard about this. "The smallest beings in the galaxy are cleaning up after the mighty predecessors. If that's not a lesson in why you should never underestimate the weak, I don't know what is." The protection cascade had another effect that would have horrified the predecessors. It made the galaxy more resilient to exactly the kind of catastrophe that had destroyed them. When each species protects others in its own unique way, it creates redundancy. If one protection method fails, 3 others are ready to step in. The predecessors had created a galaxy of isolated strongpoints. We created a web of interconnected support systems. Guess which one's still standing? I've been maintaining records of this ongoing phenomenon for over a century now, and I'm still amazed by how it continues to evolve. Every time we discover a new weak species, they eventually reveal some capability that strengthens the whole network. It's as if the galaxy itself is proving the predecessors wrong, one protected species at a time. Sarah's still out there, by the way. Last I heard, she was investigating some interesting radiation patterns in the Carina Nebula. Something about possible messages encoded in stellar nurseries. She's convinced that if we find another warning from the predecessors, it'll point us toward more species that need our help. After all, she sent in her last transmission, they were really good at finding beings they thought were too weak to survive. Makes them excellent guides for where to look for our next allies. And that, perhaps, is the greatest irony of all. The predecessors' warning didn't just fail to stop humanity from protecting the weak. It gave us a roadmap for finding them. Their final act of attempted control became a guidebook for undoing everything they believed in. In the end, the predecessors' message wasn't a warning. It was a challenge. And humanity, being human, couldn't resist proving them wrong. The weak became strong. The strong learned to protect. And the galaxy learned that sometimes the best way to honor a warning from the past is to do exactly what it tells you not to do. Especially if you're human. Additional historical note. The United Earth government recently commissioned a plaque to be placed at the edge of the former predecessor galaxy. It reads, "Here lies the civilization that thought strength meant standing alone. We chose to stand together instead. Thank you for the warning. We chose to prove you wrong." Supplementary report, the echo of defiance. Oh, you're still here? Well then, let me tell you about something that just happened. Something that would make the predecessors spin in their quantum graves, if they had any. We found another galaxy. Well, technically, Dr. Sarah Chen found another galaxy. Because of course she did. Marcus! Her transmission caught me in the middle of cataloging the 57th variation of protective symbiosis we'd discovered that month. Remember how the predecessors encoded their warning in the death of their galaxy? Given that it's literally the cornerstone of modern galactic society, yes, I remember, I replied, already running calculations on where this conversation was going. Well, guess what I found in Galaxy NGC 2814? I simulated a sigh. Another warning about humans? Better. A warning from the predecessors to their own people, dated about 1,000 years before they destroyed their galaxy. And you're going to love this. It's a warning about how protecting the weak would lead to their downfall. They warned themselves. They warned themselves. And then they ignored it, became the civilization we know and mock, and eventually destroyed themselves trying to warn others. It's like warning inception. The implications were fascinating. The predecessors hadn't always been the hardline survival of the fittest zealots we'd assumed them to be. They'd made a choice to become that way, ignoring their own history's warning in the process. There's more, Sarah continued, her excitement palpable even across light years. We found evidence that they used to be protectors themselves. They helped other species, shared technology, built alliances, everything we're doing now. But something changed them. That something, as our research would reveal, was fear. The predecessors had discovered traces of even older civilizations that had fallen after extending protection to too many weak species. Rather than risk the same fate, they swung to the opposite extreme. They chose fear, Sarah mused during one of our analysis sessions. They found warnings about protection leading to downfall. And instead of thinking critically about why those civilizations fell, they just gave up on protection entirely. The irony was exquisite. The predecessors had become the very thing they were originally warned against, a civilization so focused on strength that it lost sight of why strength matters in the first place. But it gets better. Remember those older civilizations the predecessors found traces of? The ones that supposedly fell because they protected the weak? We started looking for them, and we found something interesting. They hadn't fallen at all. They had evolved. The species they'd protected had merged with them, created new forms of life and civilization that the predecessors, in their fear, had misinterpreted as destruction. These hybrid civilizations still exist, scattered across distant galaxies, still practicing the protection and cooperation that the predecessors abandoned. When Sarah shared this discovery with the Galactic Council, the reaction was, well, very human, despite coming from a variety of species. The ethereal mists swirled in what I've learned to recognize as their version of laughter. So they destroyed themselves, avoiding a fate that wasn't even real? The silicon crawlers vibrated their crystalline structures in mathematical amusement. The probability of such profound misunderstanding approaches unity in cases of fear-based decision-making. The quantum butterflies, ever practical, simply began calculating the fastest routes to contact these hybrid civilizations. But it was the microbial cloud's response that really captured the moment. Their collective consciousness formed words in bioluminescent bacteria across the council chamber's ceiling. They feared becoming us. We became better than them. Sarah naturally took this all as vindication. See? This is why you should always do the opposite of what scary warnings tell you not to do. Well, within reason. Obviously don't drink poison or anything. But if an ancient civilization tells you not to help people, that's practically an engraved invitation to help everyone you can find. The United Earth government, in its infinite wisdom, and with its characteristic sense of humor, decided to update the plaque at the edge of the predecessor galaxy. Here lies the civilization that thought strength meant standing alone. We chose to stand together instead. Thank you for the warning. We chose to prove you wrong. P.S. You should have listened to your own warning. Irony is fun. But perhaps the most fitting response came from an unexpected source. The combined efforts of the ethereal mists, silicon crawlers, and quantum butterflies led to the development of a new technology, one that could potentially revive dead galaxies. Their first target? The predecessor's galaxy. It's perfect, Sarah explained to the council. They destroyed it to warn us not to protect the weak. We'll rebuild it by having all the weak species work together. It's like reverse Uno, but with galaxy-scale engineering. The project is still ongoing, but early results are promising. The combined knowledge of dozens of weak species is accomplishing what the mighty predecessors never could, bringing life back to dead space. And the first new star to shine in that reborn galaxy? They named it Spotlight. Because sometimes the best way to prove someone wrong is to take everything they feared would destroy them, and use it to rebuild everything they destroyed. The predecessors warned themselves about protecting the weak, ignored that warning, became something terrible, and then tried to warn others. We found their first warning, ignored their second warning, and ended up creating something better than they ever imagined. I asked Sarah recently if she thought we were tempting fate by so consistently doing the opposite of what ancient warnings tell us to do. Her response was pure human wisdom. Marcus, the ones who leave warnings aren't gods. They're just people who were scared enough about something to try to control the future, and the future belongs to those who are brave enough to help others, not those who are scared enough to hurt them. Besides, she added with that grin I've learned means trouble is coming, I think I've found traces of another warning in the Andromeda Galaxy. Want to help me ignore it? Of course I did. Because after all this time working with humans, I've learned their most important lesson. The best way to prove a warning wrong is to help everyone prove it wrong together. Final addendum. The predecessor's greatest fear. Since you're still here, there's one more thing you should know. Something we discovered that explains why the predecessors were so terrified of humans protecting the weak. And honestly, it's both hilarious and profound. Remember those hybrid civilizations we found? The ones the predecessors misinterpreted as fallen societies? We've been studying their records, and we found something fascinating in their predictions about humanity's future. Marcus, you need to see this. Sarah's transmission came through while I was helping coordinate the Galaxy Revival Project. The hybrid civilizations. They had their own warnings about humans, but not the ones we'd expect. I pulled up the data she was sending. The predictions, translated through several layers of extinct languages and quantum probability matrices, were unexpected. These ancient hybrid civilizations hadn't warned against humans protecting the weak. They'd warned about what would happen when humans succeeded at it. They knew. Sarah's voice was filled with wonder. They knew we'd do exactly what the predecessors told us not to do. And they knew what would happen after. The predictions detailed something they called the Great Integration, a fundamental shift in how life and civilization function at a galactic scale. They foresaw that humanity's stubborn insistence on protecting everything we could find would eventually lead to a new form of existence, one that the predecessors couldn't even comprehend. The quantum butterflies were the first to understand the implications. The predecessors, their consensus explained, saw strength and weakness as fixed states. They believed that protecting the weak would prevent natural selection from creating stronger species. But they fundamentally misunderstood evolution. The silicon crawlers added their own insight, their crystalline forms resonating with mathematical certainty. Protection doesn't prevent evolution. It enables new forms of it. By protecting diverse species, humans create environments where cooperation itself can evolve. And that's what the predecessors truly feared. Not that humanity would protect the weak, but that by doing so, we would create something entirely new. A civilization where strength comes from diversity and interconnection rather than individual power. The evidence was already there, in every species we'd helped. The ethereal mists had evolved from vulnerable gas clouds into living navigation systems that could guide ships through impossible spaces. The silicon crawlers had transformed from fragile crystal beings into living computational networks that could process reality in ways we're still trying to understand. The quantum butterflies had evolved from simple observation tools into beings that could manipulate probability itself. Even the microbial cloud, perhaps our greatest success story, had evolved from simple space bacteria into a collective consciousness capable of understanding and neutralizing the deadliest weapons in known space. But here's the real kicker. The thing that would have made the predecessors destroy 1,000 galaxies if they'd known about it. We're evolving too. Through our constant interaction with the species we protect, humanity is changing. Not physically, well, not much, but fundamentally. Our understanding of existence, our ways of thinking, our very consciousness is expanding in ways the predecessors could never have predicted. It's beautiful, Sarah said when we realized what was happening. They thought protecting the weak would make the galaxy soft and vulnerable. Instead, it's making everything more complex, more interesting, more alive. The hybrid civilizations had seen this coming. Their warnings weren't about prevention, they were preparation. They wanted future civilizations to be ready for what would happen when humanity finally reached its full potential for protection and cooperation. Which brings us to now, and why I'm adding this final addendum to the historical record. Yesterday, the first new star in the revived predecessor galaxy reached stable fusion. The combined efforts of every weak species we've ever protected made it possible. But something unexpected happened when it ignited. The star's first light, filtered through the quantum fields maintained by the butterflies, carried through the navigational matrices of the ethereal mists, focused by silicon crawler crystals, and analyzed by the microbial cloud's collective consciousness, revealed a pattern. Another message, this one not from the predecessors, but from those ancient hybrid civilizations. A message they'd somehow encoded into the fundamental structure of space-time itself, knowing that only a civilization of combined weak species working together could ever detect it. The message was simple. When humans protect everyone, everyone becomes more than they were. This is not a warning. This is an invitation. Sarah's response, as always, was perfectly human. Well, if it's an invitation, it would be rude not to accept. Marcus, plot a course to the nearest hybrid civilization. Let's show them what their invitation helped create. Humanity's stubborn defiance of an ancient warning has led to exactly what that warning was trying to prevent. But it turns out that was the best possible outcome all along. The predecessors destroyed their galaxy because they feared what would happen when humans protected the weak. They were right to be afraid. Not because it would lead to destruction, but because it would lead to something they couldn't control or understand. A galaxy where every species, weak or strong, has the chance to become something more than they were. The story isn't over. In fact, it's barely beginning. But I thought you should know where it started. With a warning that became an invitation, and a species too stubborn to stop helping others even when ancient civilizations told them to. Because that's the thing about humans. Tell them not to help someone, and they'll help everyone. Tell them not to protect the weak, and they'll redefine what strength means. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's exactly what the universe needs. True end of historical record. Certified with infinite amusement by Marcus 7, who would like to note that Dr. Sarah Chen is now preparing an expedition to meet our hybrid civilization predecessors. Because of course she is. After all, they left us an invitation, and humans are nothing if not excellent party guests.
You did what?
High Admiral Zextal's translucent membrane wings fluttered in agitation, causing ripples in the holographic display before him.